Hey guys, welcome back to Walking in Faith. It's early on a Thursday morning. I have no idea why David and I chose Thursday mornings for this recording. I mean, Wednesdays are the longest day of the week, and then we're here on Thursdays. I think because we kind of take it easy on Fridays and kind of enjoy a little time off there. So most pastors take Monday off. Actually, I don't think we take any days off technically, but we know Fridays is kind of a chill day. And so we do this in the morning. Why we dress up, that's another good question. I'm like, man, I just want sweats and a sweatshirt this morning to do this. And then I love Steve Lawson. I think it's Passion Hour, One Passion Ministries. And I was watching his study this morning where he does something like this at, I think it's called Herb's Coffee Shop down in Texas. And he's like fully decked out in his suit and tie and as Lawson style. And I'm like, all right, I guess I can button up his shirt this morning and iron it, even though I don't want to. That's the other thing, ironing in the morning in the dark. Anyway, first world problems, and we're good. We're happy to be here. I'm on my second cup of coffee this morning. David is got his coffee cup. I'm not sure what he's doing with it today. But we're happy to be here with you as we're diving into James chapter 2. And you might be like, well, Treg, I wish you would dive into James chapter 2 because the last study, it was just kind of skimming the surface. But I think those things are important as we look at favoritism, David, and talk about it. And so when James goes on, he's talking about this person coming in to the congregation all dressed up, and then this person that's just in rags. In this culture, it wouldn't have been abnormal for the poor to wear homemade clothing. You know, just taking something that they've made that they can wear. And it was only the rich that had the opportunity to have clothes made for them. So there was definitely a stark contrast. You know, if somebody walks into Faith Baptist Church, I maybe sometimes, but it is hard to distinguish whether they're wearing a suit from Target or a suit from Brooks Brothers, you know. But if it's tailored right, you know it's a tailored suit no matter what. So there is some distinction there. But here it was a stark contrast. But I've been in a church before where, just knowing the pastor and how things were done. When a pastor gets up on the pulpit and he's sitting there in his chair, whatever, we don't do that anymore necessarily, but, back in the day, you're up in the front. And all of a sudden, man, I just saw the pastor disappear. I'm like, what is that? And I turn around and he's introducing himself to this new family, which I've really never seen happen before. But, man, they were all dressed up, suit on. And at first glance, you're like, oh, this is a family. They're serious. And then, you go down and you think, man, this could be a great addition to the church. And then you introduce yourself to them and it's like a missionary and you're like, ugh, just kidding, missionaries. But you know what I mean. And our natural tendency, I think, in the church is to approach someone like that and ignore the person that came in off the street. Now, I will say this, though. We have had people come in off the street that beg, borrow, and steal, and then they're gone. I see it all the time. Mm-hmm. Easter Sunday a couple of years ago, we had somebody sitting out here in the front of the doors before we ever got here. And we were having breakfast, and we invited them for breakfast, and they didn't want anything to eat. They barely ate. All they wanted was money to get to Florida. Chances are they weren't going to Florida. And when I told them to get off the property and don't come back, when I figured out what was going on, they just went across the street. And it was just, just trying to get money and taking advantage of Easter. And so there is that. And that's not what we're talking about here. James makes this contrast between rich and poor that we see. And we've got to be careful in the body of Christ that we are welcoming all, and we're putting our hands around all, we're hugging all, and we're treating all equally that's coming into our congregation. Whether it's somebody that's had, been clean from drugs for a month, or somebody who's a drug rep for years. You know what I mean? And so we've got to be careful of that natural tendency not to show favoritism as well. And I love what James says as we look at this context and we get on through. Of course, he's saying, hey, I want you all to come up, sit right here. You can have the VIP seats. And then the poor, he's like, hey, we've got an overflow room. If you guys want to go to the overflow, you can be there. And then he says in verse 6, but you've despised the poor, but yet rich men have oppressed you. And then back up then, he says, but hath not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith, and the heirs of the kingdom which hath promised to them that love him? Okay, so let's do a contrast. Is not the person who's struggling on a weekly basis, coming out of an addiction, and let's say, man, they're here, I put my arm around them, say, how's it going? How you doing? It's like, Pastor, I haven't had any drugs for 2 weeks. That's awesome, right? Okay, so that person is rich in faith, as opposed to maybe someone who every I is dotted perfectly and every T is crossed. They're not dealing with anything, nor would they think about dealing with anything. So God's saying, hey, these people are rich in faith. And yes, they might not be where the others are, but the way I see this and look at this, man, these people are amazing. They're heroes for God and what they come out of. So when you see that, David, what comes to your mind when you're thinking about these two verses, 5 and 6?
Well, I think Jesus on his earthly ministry, he demonstrated this perfectly for us, because when you look at who he spent all his time with,
right,
it was always with that lower class, those poor groups,
publicans and sinners.
And talking about how he said it's easier for it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of the needle.
That's right.
And I think we can learn a lot from that example, that don't overlook anybody. It goes perfectly with that idea of favoritism, and should love everybody, treat everybody the same way, regardless of their past, what they've been through, what their current status is.
Yeah, I think it's good. So let's think about Jesus when he was here, even himself. The Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head. He didn't come and have great things. He had what he needed. And it's over in 2 Corinthians. I'll turn over there. So 2 Corinthians, chapter 8 and 9 kind of have that same philosophy. But 2 Corinthians 8, it says, I'll start in verse 8. I speak not by commandment, but by occasion of the forwardness of others, and to prove the sincerity of your love. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that you through his poverty might be rich. And I love that verse. Okay, so here is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Here is the one who holds all things in his hands. You name it, Christ has it at his disposal. And yet he became lowly. He was born in a manger. He was the son of a carpenter. And I know carpenters today, they're making kitchen cabinets and things like that. But in Bible times, this was not a high-paying job or career. And Christ put away himself, for us. And he was a true servant. I love what it says, and I'm going to go back again in John chapter 13. One of my favorite passages here in John where Jesus washes feet. Speaking of which, I heard the other day at the the marriage conference I did, that a ceremony that some people do at their wedding is washing feet. I don't know what that's about, but I hope I never find out. So it says, in supper being ended, the devil now put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands. That's rich. All things are Christ. All things were made by him. All things were created by him. He is before all things. By him all things consist. That's huge. He was come from God. He went to God. He riseth from supper. And this is the statement. he laid aside his garments. I love that. So it's almost like here is Christ in his full deity, getting ready to wash the disciples' feet, and he takes the richness of who he is and he lays it aside. He becomes poor for our sakes, and he washes the disciples' feet. I mean, that's awesome. And that's Christ becoming us and who we are. And so when it comes to then this mentality of rich and poor, we go back, as we talked about in our last study, Christ is that prime example. And we need to be looking at Christ and seeing what Christ did. And when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. I was homeless, you took me in. Jesus, we never saw you thirsty or hungry or naked or homeless. He says, yeah, but when you've done it to the what? The least of these, you've done it unto me. Psalm says, consider the cause of the poor. And there's some that just take advantage of us no matter what, like I was saying. But there's some who legitimately, man, we need to take in. Who legitimately we need to make sure we're taken care of. And we don't despise them and we don't put them out, but we show them the love of Christ. And I remember we used to run buses and bring kids in, and we pick up about 21 kids from a local income area here in town. And one Christmas, we just simply gave them gloves and toboggans. That was it. And gloves, toboggans, a few other things, but that was primarily all that we gave them. And in one year, though, I did give a girl this big teddy bear, because in conversation I heard her say that she's asked for a big teddy bear from Santa her whole life and never got one. And she wasn't going to get one. So I did a contest, and whoever won got a special prize, and she just happened to win and got this monster teddy bear, man. She just cried. But that Christmas where we gave scarves and toboggans and gloves to those kids, I heard one of them say, this is the best Christmas I've ever had.
Wow.
And one of the girls got up, 16-year-old girl wrote on the chalkboard, we know faith loves us. I mean, that's gloves and toboggans. If we did that to my kids, they'd never speak to me again, right? But that's ministry. That's what we're here to do when we can do that, and God gives us opportunity to do so. So thoughts on that, David? We think about, again, this section of Christ becoming poor for us.
No, I just love the imagery there. We sometimes lose sight, or at least I lose sight of all what Jesus gave up, all that God the Father gave up to send Jesus here to die for us. If we were asked to give up all of our riches, most of us probably would not be as willing. I know that's a hard ask. Yeah. Even when Jesus told the rich young ruler to sell all he had, he didn't do it. But Jesus, like you said, gave it up willingly for us.
It's good, man. It's good. Well, hey, we're going to end with that today. Thank you for joining us and walking in faith. But let me say this. I should have done this at the beginning because by now people stopped watching. But if you're still watching, we're going to start moving all these videos over to our new YouTube channel, Walking in Faith. And we're going to have some other videos there. I encourage you to go to it, to like and to subscribe, and to start watching these videos there as we transition out of this channel itself. So Walking in Faith, like and subscribe, and we'll see you there again next week.